I think we're gonna get started now. It's 11:06. The leaderboard is filling up, so we can justify taking some time off to learn some new tools. Yo just gave a fantastic workshop, showed some beautiful things. And we're going to focus on Tableau, which is software that is free to students, and they also have produced a public version of the software, which is available to everyone for free. I think Tableau is one of those companies that has kind of jumped on the open data movement, and one of the, I think we had several titles for this workshop. It's mapping, but also using open data. And Tableau has a lot of built-in connections for open data, and we'll be using some examples of open data in the workshop. So let's jump right in with a little scenario. And we like to start our workshops with kind of a research question or a hypothesis. And when COVID started, when the pandemic started, we were busy, of course, mapping the virus and the response to the virus, but we were also starting to think about services for students. And I just want you to take a minute here and close your eyes and remember what it was like when the pandemic began and we knew we didn't have to report to work. We were going to be working from home. Everyone was in quarantine. Just close your eyes, and I want you to remember back to waking up that morning, how quiet Los Angeles was. There was no traffic on the streets. It was almost like a school day back in the Midwest when there was snow. Everything was sort of hushed. And this workshop came out of that idea of sort of what would it be like if we could all work from home, or most of us could work from home, and we sort of lived a little bit more locally. We could walk or bike to places where the library might deliver our books and our research materials. And this workshop kind of grew out of that notion of sort of a hypothesis of what it would be like to live and work and study in Los Angeles if, instead of requiring that students come to the library to get their materials, what if we took advantage of the public libraries where there were drop-off points and things like that, where the library would deliver your materials so that rather than commuting all the way into campus, you could just go to your local library, perhaps close to where you're living or working, and get the materials that you need there. And so this workshop came out of this idea of a collaboration with the public libraries, and how could we, use data to answer the question of, could we, with those, public wireless access points, and maybe creating a map that would show where students are living, could we, justify establishing a new service that might deliver books to the public library system rather than insisting that people take public transportation and endangering their health? They get better exercise. So I can see Annalie's smiling face here because I know she's a biker. And this was kind of an idea of, okay, what if everyone could just bike to the library location or to a library and get the books? So what we did was take open data. We wanted to make use of open data. One package is from the University of Minnesota. It's called IPUMs or IPUMs, and they have historical GIS data. We're going to use that. And the other is Hotspot Locator that LA County, which is also involved in publicly sharing their data. they built this application, which is great for showing how you can access local hotspot areas. You just put in your address, your home address, and it will, or where you're working, and it will find a hotspot for you. And the map included, of course, the public libraries as hotspots. And so we were able to grab data and use it for our purposes. So rather than just one address and seeing where the local hotspot was, we wanted to be able to check, you know, lots of different addresses. So we started with the concept of this kind of map. And one of the ways I like to use Tableau, I'm talking a lot here. One of the ways I like to use Tableau is just not at the end of a process, but at the beginning. So I tend to do things backwards. I like to, you know, have a hypothesis and kind of test it out in an interface that I'm familiar with. And that's what Tableau is really great at, is allowing you to test a hypothesis with data before you invest a lot of time in cleaning it or gathering additional data, filling it out. You can easily use it to upload your data, and then it's a public platform, so you can publish the results of what you make. And I like it because then I can download the things that I made 2 years ago, and it has all the bells and whistles that I added and remembered at that time. So that's kind of our premise, that we're going to use Tableau in that way of almost like a workbook, pulling together our materials. We'll use open data, and that's been defined as data that's freely used and reused and redistributed by anyone. And Tableau has been part of that movement. The library has been involved too in sort of packaging data, making open source data more available and accessible in the same way that the University of Minnesota has done for IPUMs. So here's our 2 sources of data. The Hotspot Locator, it had addresses, so we were able to geocode it using IDRI's geocoder. And then we got information about where students live from IPUMs at the University of Minnesota, where they take census data and package it up so that it's available at micro levels, which is really, really great. Part of this share and reuse movement for data, open data, is of course then to cite the things that you create, show where you got the data from. And so I just added in this little slide because oftentimes all you have to do is check that data that you download and they will give you information. They want you to cite the data as a way to kind of stimulate this economy of sharing and share alike. So I'm going to turn it over to Joy now, who can talk you through the steps. We've packaged up the data for you and put it in a box folder, and she'll get you started showing you how to bring things into Tableau, how to work with the application, as I have said, sort of like a workbook. And then we'll end up publishing that data set and hopefully sharing some of the work that you've done today. Joy?
Yeah, that's great. So I am going to start sharing my screen. Can everyone, let's see my desktop? Okay. Oh, it's saying that I cannot minimize my screen when I'm recording. Zoe, are you able to see the PowerPoint?
Yeah. Let me see. I can get rid of this.
Let me try that one more time.
viewing yours. Okay.
Is my desktop appearing for everyone?
Sorry about that.
Oh, it is. Okay, so you're seeing yourselves on like a gallery view. It's kind of strange because I'm missing the green border on my recording.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. But now I should have the Tableau interface pulled up for everyone. Yes, okay, perfect. All right, so let me drop the link for the slides in the chat. You can kind of follow along if you have any questions or anything like that. Yo kind of notified me that the PowerPoint in the box folder is 150 megabytes. I apologize for that file size. It's because I decided to use Giphies. So it could sort of track my movement with the mouse and it'll just make it easier for you guys to follow along on the slides itself. And so like Zoe had said before, I really like using Tableau as sort of a sandboxing environment to really just get to play with your data before you do anything very intensive with it. It's just a very efficient way to sort of map out everything. And so on slide number 7, you should be able to see the box link. So if you want to pull up Tableau Public right now, or Tableau Desktop if you already have it, you can do that. And then just download the file on Box. And feel free to stop me and ask any questions anytime. And so once we have that downloaded and we have Tableau Public opened up, you should be able to see this page. And on the left-hand side, you have all these different type of file sources that you can connect to. The trick here is to know that for CSV files, you actually have to click on the text file. But for the purposes of this workshop, we're going to break it down into 2 different demos. So the first demo will be a very basic setup of just using a singular file. And then the second part of our workshop, we're going to be adding on extra files. And for that one, Zoe is going to kind of explain how Tableau has recently updated. And so they're going to use a different type of join method to join the different files together. So right now you can see that I already have the book mobile map opened up for myself, but it should be blank for you if you haven't used Tableau Public before. And so our first step is to connect the Microsoft Excel file. So we're going to click on here and then just navigate to your Tableau 2020 folder. And you're going to find a file called cleaned public Wi-Fi. And this is the file that we pulled from the Wi-Fi hotspot locator that Zoe had just shared.
Yeah, there were 2 files. One that had commercial hotspots and one that had public, which was kind of nice for us because we decided that the commercial ones were McDonald's and Starbucks. And so we thought, let's just stick with the public Wi-Fi because a lot of the places were outdoors and we thought this is great. Our bookmobile could go there.
And so as soon as you select OK, this should be the screen that you're on. You're going to find all of your connections on the left-hand panel. And once you drag in the sheet, which I'm going to do right now, you should instantly see all of your variables just in this section of your screen. And so for each variable, you can see that Tableau has automatically assigned a label to each one. And so if you look at latitude and longitude, you can see that there's already a geographic role that's been assigned. So in some cases, if you upload kind of data that hasn't been cleaned or thoroughly cleaned, you can adjust the label just by clicking these. But as you can see from our file name, we actually cleaned it beforehand. So everything here is just going to be perfect for us to use immediately.
Joy, there's some people who are a little behind. Can we back up a couple steps again?
Sure. Let's see. Okay, so let me just go ahead and go back. So this is going to be your start page. And on the left-hand side, this is where you're going to kind of connect your initial file. So I'm just going to select Microsoft Excel. And then select the Wi-Fi Excel file. Kelly, can you sort of describe to me what you're seeing then on your start page? Or if you guys are kind of, or if you guys have already connected the file, can you guys show me like a thumbs up reaction?
Okay, I'll dialogue with Kelly individually. Yeah.
Perfect. So I'm just going to open it one more time. And I'm going to drag this table here. And again, this is where all the variables are. And so after I do that, Tableau, it's sort of ready to go. So I'm going to click on Go to Worksheet, which is right at the bottom here. And this is going to take you to the main interface of Tableau. And I'm just going to kind of briefly go over some of the main features. So on the left-hand side, you can see all of these variables are, in Tableau speak, it's called pills because of the little pill, elongated pill form. But the difference between the colors is that blue represents a dimension variable and green represents a measure. So dimensions basically contain qualitative values such as names, dates, or geographical data. And you can use these dimensions to categorize segments and reveal sort of the details in your data. And I like to remember measures as m equals math. So measures are, they contain quantitative values. So they're just numeric values that can be aggregated. So when you drag these variables into your main worksheet form, Tableau is going to automatically by default sort of create a sum of all of your measures. On the right-hand side here, this is probably my favorite feature in Tableau. You're going to see all of these different graphs that you can visualize. And so just by clicking various combinations of variables from the left-hand side to the columns or the rows, the Show Me tab is going to show you the different ways you can sort of see what your data is showing. And on the top bar, it's just going to be your main menu bar. And this is also a very important category. It's called marks. So this is the way that you sort of paint on the different labels for your variables. So for now, we're going to create our map. And to do so, we're just going to double click on latitude and then double click on longitude. So instantly, in like less than 10 seconds, Tableau automatically reads the geographical points and shows you a map. And obviously right now we have more than just one library. And so in order to see all of the library locations, we're going to drag in type into color. And so what this does is it basically shows us the different types of buildings that are available. However, it's still not populating all of the library locations. So we're going to drag in facility full name into label.
Woohoo!
And then now you can see all of the different points. And moving forward, I sort of have a challenge question for us, which is, if a user wants to know whether or not Wi-Fi is available outdoors, how would they do that? And so I'll sort of give you a couple minutes to figure it out. And a hint is that this variable, access outdoors, is what tells us whether or not there is Wi-Fi available outside.
Sorry to interrupt really quick. I'm not seeing a lot of the additional filters that you have on the screen, and I was wondering if there's something in, like, when you get from your initial view of your table, when you've added it in, what do you have to do to get everything to look like, to move on to this next step where you can see the different fields in your left-hand column, and then there's that center column with the ability to manipulate things?
So I'm assuming, have you dragged this table into this area? It should say sheet 1.
Yes.
And so you're seeing all of these variables here?
Yes.
Okay. And so at the bottom, you've clicked worksheet 1.
Okay, now that's it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
No worries. Yeah, it's a very small tab. So just starting from the data source tab, if you want to kind of create, start working on your variables, you need to open up a new worksheet.
Okay, thank you very much. Apologies on that.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you for jumping in and asking the question. And so just going back to the data source, I'm sort of looking through all these different variables, and you can see access outdoors, it should say either no or yes. So the answer to this question is that you would drag this variable into the filters tab. And then you can select yes and no, because that's what you want to display. And then after you hit OK, if you notice that nothing pops out, it's probably because you need to click on this arrow and click show filter. So sometimes Tableau will show the filter and sometimes it won't. So this is just a good way to make sure that it's showing up. So as soon as I do that, I can now filter through the different library locations that either have Wi-Fi hotspots or doesn't. Okay. So it looks like most of us are at this point. And before we go any further, the most important rule of thumb for any program is that you want to save your work, because you don't want to do this all over again. And so we're going to click on File and Save to Tableau Public As.
Joy, there's still some people who aren't getting the labels, so maybe you could show that step again of dragging the facility name over to labels.
Yeah, this action takes a little getting used to, just because it's what makes Tableau different from other programs. So it's this dragging motion. So I'm just going to double click the latitude and longitude one more time. And I'm going to drag the type variable over the colors marks. So that's going to separate our library locations by type. And you can see this filter appear here. And in order to get all of the library locations, I have to drag in facility full name over to label. And for right now, we can you can choose to leave the sheet 1 as sheet 1, or you can double click on the bottom corner where you had added a worksheet, and you can name that just map.
There was also a question, Joy, about that some of the names aren't showing up. And I think if you show them that's a function of the zooming, and some of the names are hidden because you're just not hovering over them. So, look for some of the names there, and then hovering over things will oftentimes reveal things because they don't want overlap. So the labels are kind of magic or smart that way.
Mhm. And if you ever want to tweak any of these options, you can actually select these marks cards, and then you'll find like kind of a drop-down menu where you can see if there's an option here to allow the label to overlap, which becomes kind of a mess. So by default, Tableau doesn't allow the labels to overlap. But of course, you can change that at a later time.
Yeah, some people are having trouble, and I had trouble too in the beginning with just panning across the map, how to move the map itself.
Mhm.
And a lot depends on whether you're using a mouse or a screen pad, but maybe you could just show them a little bit, Joy, of how to move around.
Yeah. So this is kind of our map. And if you hover over to the map, you're going to see this menu kind of pop up. And so this is kind of just a way to search the map. And the plus and minus is just to zoom in or out. And if you have a mouse, just using the scroll wheel will allow you to do that as well. And this right pointing arrow is actually the one that pulls up most of your navigation capabilities. And so this button is pan, or you can use F, as you can see the hotkey kind of just show up right here. So once you have that selected, you can use your left click and sort of pan around the map.
And one more question, and that's about accessing outdoors. If you could show that one more time, please.
Yeah, sure. So I've removed the variable, but on the left, you can just click on Access Outdoors, click, hold, and drag to filters. And then you can just select all, which will select all the cases. There might be some cases where you drag in a variable and you don't want to include everything that's listed. But for this case, it's just a yes, no. So we're selecting all. And then we click OK. And in order to get that to show, there's a little drop-down arrow. And then you can select Show Filter.
All these little hidden things hovering, it's very sensitive to touching and hovering and clicking.
Mhm. Right. And so now to sort of save your entire workbook, so the biggest difference between Tableau Public and Tableau Desktop is with Tableau Desktop, you can actually save it locally. But as Zoe mentioned earlier, with Tableau Public, you can save it and sort of link out the gallery to anyone you want. So you can click Save to Tableau Public As. And for some reason, I have this error, which I have not seen before, but it looks like, I don't know if anyone else is experiencing this as well, but I'm going to have to change this into an extract, which, yeah, for some reason, there should be an area here that says either live or an extract. So you should be able to extract this file. Let's see, I'm just going to kind of refresh my data source. Is anyone sort of experiencing the same thing when they're trying to save the file?
Yeah, I think people are getting the sign-in page and yeah, logging into Tableau Public. That's the one disadvantage, I would say, to Tableau Public is that you can't save the workbook locally. You're going to have to publish it. And Tableau Desktop will allow you to save it locally. So what you have to do is create an account on Tableau Public, and then you can save it to the server. And that makes it visible to everyone. So yeah.
I'm hoping that I'm the only person experiencing this issue right now, because I'm not able to see the option for live or an extract. But I can also pull up, let's see, Tableau desktop. Right, okay, so thank you for bearing with me, but when I pull out my Tableau desktop, I see this, this option right here on the top right that says connection. And you have the ability to either pull in a live or an extract view of your data. So the difference is that with an extract view, it's just going to take a snapshot of your current data. And with the live view, you can actually clean the data live, and it's just going to automatically populate the data as you save your Excel file or your CSV file. And so in order to have Tableau run smoothly, you in most cases, you'd want to choose the extract function for all of that. And so because saving this workbook for me is not that important, I'm just going to sort of skip this step. But I think for everyone else, hopefully you're able to save the workbook.
Craig had a good question. He was asking if you could show how you could color by something other than type, say something outdoor, the outdoor Wi-Fi is one color,
Right.
and the other locations are a different color. You want to try that, Joy?
Yeah, sure. So I'll just remove the type from the color. And instead, I'm just going to drag in Access Outdoors into color. And so immediately you can visualize which ones are accessible outdoors, which ones are not. And that's a great question. And it kind of showcases just how flexible Tableau is, all depending on which variable you're dragging onto a marks card.
Yeah, for example, you could use city or county as a way of coloring as well, or which city, and it will, you know, assign a unique color to the different variables. So you can play around, and depending on what you're interested in, you can use color to designate lots of different things.
Right, and I saw him say that, yeah, in this case, you would not need the filter because obviously it's kind of duplicate information unless you really want to drive in the point. And if you drag in things into size, you can also kind of visualize it by size, which is not really helpful in this case, but if you have other variables, you can change the size of the points on the map depending on the fields. So I'm going to sort of change it to how it was before. And right now, it's a pretty nice, simple map, but we really want to sort of beautify it because unless you're an LA native, it's just really difficult to tell where all of these locations are. So in order to do that, we're going to navigate to the top menu, and where it says map, you can click on map options. Or I'm sorry, I misspoke, map layers. And so after you click on that, Tableau will give you another panel where you can edit sort of the base map. And so for the style, you can select streets. And so instantly you can sort of visualize exactly where in LA these locations are located at. And feel free to sort of change it up how you'd like, but for personally, I would rather not see sort of the terrain and the extra information here. So I'm just going to uncheck these and leave base, street, and cities selected. And so again, I pulled out this panel by going to the top and selecting map layers. And on the left, you can also adjust how washed out the back is. But right now, we just want to keep it at 0% so that you can see everything clearly. And another great feature of Tableau is that it already has kind of recent demographic data built into the program. So I believe all of this data is coming from 2018. and we're going to visualize the per capita income. So on the left-hand side, underneath data layer, we're going to select layer and then per capita income. And right now you can see that everything is sort of just green because it's visualizing the entire state as a whole. So the next option is to change the state to zip code. And now you can see sort of the color gradient of just the income per capita. And you can even customize the colors by going to using. And then here you can choose which one is appealing to you. So remember, our goal was to figure out which neighborhood would be sort of most heavily impacted by the lack of resources. So we're really taking advantage of the inherent demographic data that comes with Tableau. And it represents sort of the total income of the area divided by the number of people living there. And so you can see exactly where the locations of the libraries are, or the public facilities are compared to the income level in LA.
Joy, we have a few questions here. If you could go back to the data panel and just talk a little bit about how the variables are separated. And I know that's something that's changed, not the source, but just the next mat. If you go to the worksheet, the panel on the left, sheet 1, yeah, not the map layers, but the data layer, yeah. And they're asking how those are sorted. And I know that this has changed in desktop. I'm not sure. He's asking, why are the colors different, green and blue?
Oh, that's just to kind of visualize the difference. So the blue represents dimensions. So those are most of your qualitative data. So anything from names, geographic locations, and the green represents measures. And so these are usually numbers that you can aggregate. And in this case, the latitude and longitude is treated as a measure as well. But when you're playing around with your data, at any time, you can actually drag in like from a measure and turn that into a dimension. So depending on how you want Tableau to treat your data, it really gives you a lot of flexibility to, just to like change the way some variables are considered. And so for instance, if you don't want a measure to be aggregated, then you would categorize that as a dimension, and you can drag it right back if you don't want it to.
Yeah, and there was another question about how Tableau knew that you wanted a map. And maybe you could explain that a little bit, Joy, when you double click, how it decides what goes into the columns and what goes into the rows up at the top there.
So I had mentioned earlier that when you plug in the data source, Tableau will sort of go through and sort of read exactly what kind of data it is and give it your best guess. So for all of these latitude numbers, it like immediately read it as latitude. So it assigned it a geographic role. So because it was assigned a geographic role, when you go to the worksheet and you double click it, it'll just automatically know to put it under row and column. So for instance, if I click this button right here, which is kind of fun, but it swaps the variables from between the row and the column. So as you can see, it kind of got rid of my map because it no longer reads it as a map because the latitude and the longitude variables are in the wrong positions. So I'm just going to swap it back, and immediately I get the map back again. So instead of constantly remembering that latitude should go under rows and longitude should go into columns, I just naturally double click. So if I remove that, double click it, immediately Tableau will know to make a map, which is just very handy. Are there any other questions, Zoe?
Let's see. I think some people are still struggling with like just turning it into a map, you know, so they've got the data panel and just, you know, that process of double clicking or dragging latitude and longitude, you know, from the variable up to columns and rows, or, you know, I'm not sure they're familiar with the double click.
Okay. Yeah, and I've also created GIFs on the PowerPoint slides, so you can see exactly where my mouse is. And yeah, it's simply kind of just a double click.
Yeah, Andrew said he kind of reset it and now it's working. So he's got it going.
Yeah, Tableau can act up sometimes, as do all programs, but
yeah.
Right.
And then there is a question about the demographic data that is static, and the next part of the workshop will show you how to import your own data. That's what we're going to be getting from IPUMs. So we realize that, you know, not everyone wants modern data. Joy and I did a workshop where we brought in IPUMs data from the 1940s and used and also imported a map of the 1940s. So that's why we're using EPUMs, is that the boundary files and the data, it can be historic. So we're going to be using that. We'll show that next, where you're swapping out that whole data layer with customized data.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense? Any other questions? Maybe we can take, it's 11:48. And I think what we can do, if there are no more questions, we'll just take a quick break. The second half of the workshop, then we'll combine this. I mean, Tableau is really great in creating layers. So we'll take out that bottom layer of the current statistical data and we'll supply our own data. And Gina's asking, is it only if the map is only available for the US? It's worldwide. Tableau is worldwide. So if you have, and this is what we'll show, that data that is in there is only US. And so, you know, by learning how to bring data in, you can use, EPUMs also has international data, so you can swap that whole layer out and create international maps as well. We've done it for countries all over the world, so it's really great. Yeah, Gina.
Yeah, so really it's only with the US.
Any other questions we can answer now? I think maybe just a quick 10-minute break. I don't have any music, but maybe we can get Yo, or I'll find some music if you like. Joy,
Right.
this is really great. Yeah, can maps be saved as images?
Yes, so you can actually export the maps. And I believe this is only available with the Tableau desktop though. So if I went to, let's see, Tableau desktop, it's a little bit of a sneak peek of what we're going to be seeing, but you can save or export. So let's see right here, save as. So it should be a worksheet. So your map is going to be living on a worksheet. So under worksheet, you can export it as an image right here. Yeah, and so for the next part of the workshop, we're going to be bringing in our own map layers because right now we've just kind of showed where the low-income communities are in Los Angeles, but we really want to see where the students are living. And that is not this sort of a data layer that is found in Tableau inherently. So we're going to be bringing that in next.
Yeah, and we have that. The nice thing about IPUMs is that it has data at a micro level. So it has the number of students per block group, which is even smaller than the census tract. So it's very granular, and you can, it's just amazing. We have the data for the entire state of California, but IPUMs has that data for the whole US. And they don't have that level of granularity for everything or for every year, but it does have a lot of international data as well. So this is a good example to show what you can do with census data that's joined or lined up with GIS and shapefiles. So that's what we'll do starting at noon. It's noon now, and I think we should get started again. We have one question from Brian about whether it's possible to save this as an interactive map so that users and the viewers can zoom in and out, and whether that's possible to insert it into a website. And Joy, I don't know if you want to share a map that's been published to Tableau Public, just show it from the browser perspective. I think that would answer the question really well. If we could just, the final result is designed to be interactive rather than static. And one of the things that I really love is that instead of giving a PowerPoint presentation, I can save my worksheets to Tableau. And, I think there was a question in Yo's section about annotating things. It's very flexible in terms of setting up kind of a user experience and even embedding the results in your website or other places. So the users, once you publish it, you can, the users can interact with the map. Maybe I'll let Joy show just a little bit of what they can do.
Yeah, Zoe, are you able to see my desktop?
Yes.
Okay, great. So right now I have my profile pulled out. I've just selected one of the Tableau workbooks. And so this is completely all like interactive. And you can embed, or let's see, yeah, there's an embed code here. So you can actually embed this workbook into any website that you're making. So yeah, Tableau is really great at making it very user-friendly, just to be able to share the work that you've put out. So.
Could you also show Joy how to download the workbook? This is the feature that I really like because I sometimes forget what I have done, or I see another person who's done some really great style that I want to copy, and I can actually download their workbook and take a look at how they made those translucent dots or how they arranged the variables.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is actually the download icon right here, so you can access it here, or if you're already looking at the workbook, it's a little hidden, so you definitely have to scroll down to see it, but it's either at the bottom bar when you click this icon, or it's at the top where it says download.
Yeah, and it's a great way of saving your work. It's almost like documenting. It's sort of like a self-documenting thing because you can go back to earlier workbooks or the workbooks that someone else has shared, and you can, access other people's work as well. Share the work that way. I see another question. If the underlying data shifts, Craig is writing, can the interactive map refresh itself, or do you need to republish it manually? Yeah, you have to republish it. And Joy, maybe you could show once more about how you publish your work, where to go. And yeah, it's a little different in Tableau Public and Tableau Desktop, but they both have this save to Tableau Public. And when you save it, you're kind of publishing the data. You can protect it by preventing people from download, but that's a little trickier. The default is kind of set up to make everything publishable. Jane, do you see it there where Joy is showing the publish?
So for, I believe, the desktop version, let's see, I might have to kind of take a look as well.
Yeah, it's over on server.
Yeah, so it's over on server and then Tableau Public, and you can select Save to Tableau Public As.
But Tableau Desktop will also just let you save it as a workbook or export it as a PowerPoint presentation. It has a lot more functionality there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Annalie is asking about tutorials for Tableau Public.
Mm-hmm.
The Tableau site has great tutorials, but we've been noticing that there are a lot of tutorials just on YouTube. It seems like everyone has their Tableau tutorial, including University of California, because this is the way they distribute a lot of the data, system-wide data. So all the MSOs have been contacting us for Tableau instruction because the data comes to them as, published as workbooks. So, undergraduate enrollment statistics, all that data is available on UCOP website, Annalie, where people are just downloading and remixing and republishing. So it's a whole cycle of reusing and interoperability that's happening. It's really great.
Mm-hmm. And the website I'm on right now is just on Tableau Public site. They have a tab called Resources, and from here you can kind of go to how-to videos. They have some sample data that you can play with, and there are some community resources as well. Yeah, and so the tutorials that they put out are mostly kind of geared towards the industry, and that's why we find it very helpful to sort of use academic data sources to put together a tutorial that's more for the university audience. But again, their website has a lot to choose from as well.
Yeah, and there's a question about taking something down or erasing something. You can take it down and you can also restrict it so people can view it, but they can't download the data. You just have to poke around in there. I think we should get started though. We can save the questions. I'll answer them in chat as Joy gets started on the second portion of the workshop, because we're going to do some complex joining of data and bringing in GIS and spatial data, to kind of build that underlying layer. We'll replace that underlying map with kind of our own data and statistics about where students live in LA County. So yeah, and Annalie will explain a little bit more about joining data as we're going.
Right, so now at this point, everyone should have already created their initial map. You want to go ahead and go to the bottom left and click on data source again. And so this is just going to bring you back to the start of the page where we've added all of our data sources that we want. And so now we're going to join in two more. One of them is a spatial data and the other is a CSV file. So for the first one, we're going to join in just a spatial file. So we're going to click Add next to Connections. And this should be the option that says Spatial File. And I'm just going to navigate to my Tableau 2020 folder. If you're on a Mac, I would advise you to unzip the zip folder first, so you can sort of click and go straight to the shapefile itself. As you can see, Tableau has a way of just kind of reading which file you're looking for. So the only one that's going to be available to connect to is the shapefile. And something that's important about this step is that you want to connect to the file where it's living with all of the other files in the same folder. So you don't want to extract the shapefile because it actually needs to read kind of the other data that goes along with it. We kind of discovered this during another workshop in the past when we taught the Walker workshop. And one of the students said that Tableau just would not read the shapefile. And so we figured out that we have to keep the shapefile within the context of all the other files in the folder. So we're going to select that and just open it up. And so you see on the left-hand side, this little table icon. And now we're going to join this with our first sheet 1. And so I'm just clicking and dragging, and it forms this little, like this fun little noodle here, which Zoe can go into in a little bit. But right now it's asking us to edit the relationship. So what Tableau is asking for is, how do you want to ingest the data? And what exactly do you want to keep from each file? So between sheet 1 and the block group file, we're going to find a variable called county and just select that. And this is easily, it's sort of hidden and you might miss it, but you're going to want to click on the equal sign. And so these are the different ways that the data is going to be read relationally to each other. If you have any sort of experience with SQL, then you'll understand sort of what these symbols mean. So we're going to select the two kind of opposite greater than and less than signs, which basically means not equal to. So I'm going to select that and then also select something that's similar, but just from knowing my own data, I know that the county on the left-hand side does not exactly equal to the county name on the right-hand side. And that's why I'm using the not equals to sign instead of the equal sign.
So it's not, the explanation is that it's not a perfect match. And what's happening is that you're telling Tableau to match the data up. And when Joy clicks that update link, you'll see this happening. She's taking the data from that list of public Wi-Fi spots, and she's matching it up on county with the shape file that we got from IPUMs.
Mm-hmm. And so now we're going to add in our next file, which is going to be a CSV file. So I'm navigating to the adding the connection again, selecting text file. I'm going back to my Tableau 2020 folder, and where it says CSV, I'm going to click on the NHGIS block group.csv. So I'm going to select open. And again, on the left-hand side, it populates all of the different tables that are a part of that CSV file. So I'm going to drag in the first one and all the way to the right-hand side. And Tableau kind of automatically reads these two variables as GIS join because they are actually the same variable on both of these files. So after that is sort of selected, I don't really have to touch it or do anything to it. I'm clicking the X button and just selecting update now.
Joy, if you could undo that and redo after the shape file. I think a lot of people were, looking at the interface and unable to follow along.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and add in the connection and then the text file. And the folder that I want to click on is the one with the underscore CSV. And I'm going to select on the one that says block_group.csv and just select open.
So now this is the actual student census data. The CSV file has that census data that says how many students are living in each block group. The shape file is the boundaries for each one of those block groups, and it automatically will detect the unique ID to join those two up, the block and then the CSV file.
So I'm just dragging the first table that I see, which is the block_group. I'm dragging it to the right of the shape file. I really don't have to touch this because Tableau has already found 2 of the equal variables. So GIS join equals GIS join. And then I'm just going to select update now. And now what I'm going to do is, because it's reading the spatial file of the entire state of California, we're actually going to help Tableau run a little bit quicker by adding in a global filter. So what that looks like, remember in the previous exercise, we dragged in the Access Outdoors into the filter for the worksheet. Well, in this case, we want this filter to run through all of our data. So what that looks like is right on the data source panel where we are, on the top right-hand side, you're going to see the filters area, and you're just going to select add. And it's going to pop out a dialog box where you can add in the data source filters. We're going to add, and again, this is a ton of variables because now we have 3 files in the program at the same time. So if you want to, you can actually type in what we're looking for, which is county 1.
So we're kind of joining up all these files on this notion of county, because what we really want is to focus on LA County. If we wanted the whole state, we would have joined up on state.
I'm just going to select OK, and it's going to populate all the different options here. And I see Los Angeles County, so I'm only going to select that. So what that's doing is it's keeping only the Los Angeles County variable. So the detail says keeps LA County, and then we're going to hit OK. I'm just having it update the data now.
Yeah, and Julia is asking if we could repeat the filter part.
Yeah, so I just undid what I had added, and on the top right-hand side, again, it's filters. Select add one more time, and then I'm just typing in county 1. So make sure it's the one that says, yeah, county 1, not any of the other options. So I'm going to select OK. And then where it says LA County, I'm going to select that and then select OK. So now you can kind of scroll down and see that all of the rows should have LA County on here.
Because it would take us 2 hours to do the whole state, but we actually have the data for the whole state as well.
And so I'm not going to go over what all of these variables are because I don't have that memorized in front of me right now, but I can tell you that we only need AJYEE 17 and 18. So a really convenient function in the data source panel on Tableau is that you can hide the columns that you don't want to see. So right here, I have AJYEE001 selected. And if you're a little bit behind, you don't have to do this step. It's just to sort of clear out your tables. I'm going to have that selected, and then holding my shift bar, I'm going to select AJYEE016. Because these are just describing all of the numbers of students at various education levels that are living in LA County. But what we really want to look at is the column 017 and 018, because those are the undergraduate and the graduate students. So after I have all those columns selected, I'm just right-clicking, and there's an option to hide these fields. So after I do that, those fields are now gone, as you can see right here. And later on, when I go to my worksheet, those variables are not going to appear anymore. So that just really helps you to organize what data you really want to be looking at.
So some people are just seeing the GIS join. Joy, I think that some of them are sorting the fields. If you can just show them right under the noodles,
Yes.
there's that different way of viewing the data, not that one, the where it says sort data. Yeah, right above the green line. Yeah, but one more over. Yeah, that one. If you click on that, it sort of views the columns instead of the rows. I think Annalie might be seeing that.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the default should just be the left.
Yeah. I'm not sure that solved Annalie's problem. Annalie, do you have 3 boxes across the top? Okay. Yeah, she's good now.
Okay.
And Wilson is saying just to slow down a little bit. I think,
Okay. Yeah.
that would help. Yeah.
So I'm just undoing what I did. So right now, hopefully everyone has all these 3 sheets open up, and we've applied the filter right here. So the columns that I'm hiding again are AJYEE 0, 0, 1, all the way to 16. These are kind of the kindergarten levels, preschool levels, elementary school, you name it. It's everything that we don't really need to see for the purposes of this exercise. 017 and 018 represent the undergraduate and graduate level students. So again, after you have all that selected, you can right click and select hide. And when you click on update, those columns should be hidden from your view. And again, just to make things easier, I'm going to go ahead and do that again with a different set of variables. So AJYEM represents the margin of error. So that is also data that we don't need to be looking at. So from 001, I'm going to hide all the way to 019. So after I have that selected, I'm just going to hide those from my view. Again, this step is optional, and if you get confused, all you really need are these 2 columns, 017 and 018, and you can skip these steps. So for the purposes of time, I'm just going to move on. And the hide control is if you right click on the column, you should be able to see hide. So now we're going to showcase another feature in Tableau, which is to make calculated fields. So with the drop-down menu, there should be an option here that says to create a calculated field. And what we want to do is add both the variables up for the undergraduate students and the graduate students. So depending on which one you had selected to create the calculated field, you'll see that variable automatically be on that dialog box. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add these 2 columns up. So I'm just typing in AJYEE 018. And instead of calculation 1, I just want to make it more sensible, give it a sensible name, but we're going to type in total underscore students. Once I hit OK and I hit update, I have a new column here now that has added up the totals between 017 and 018. And so I'm going to delete this column and kind of go through that step again. Right now you have AJYEE 017, AJYEE 018. So right here you can see this little drop-down menu. Once I select that, there's an option here that says create calculated field. So I'm just selecting it and I'm adding AJYEE 017. You can see as I'm typing that Tableau is already trying to guess what variable I have selected. So I'm going to finish this up and then just add a addition symbol right between that. And then I'm changing the name to total underscore students. So immediately you should see this new calculated column. And hopefully everyone has sort of caught up. Let me know that. Okay.
I think we're good.
Okay, cool, awesome. So we're going to move on to our map. And at the bottom, you can kind of see maps, the original one that we created, but we're just going to add in a new worksheet. So we want to start this map from scratch. And so this should be, again, a familiar empty interface where you see all of your variables on your left-hand side. They are categorized by dimensions and measures, and you'll see the different data files that you have. So all I did was kind of minimize it, but you can see the 3 different files that we had joined together. So Tableau is now reading and pulling in variables from each of these files. And so from the shape file, we want to pull in the census tract data. So instead of doing what we had done before, which was dragging in the latitude and longitude, I'm just going to double click on geometry. And so remember, we had filtered out only for LA County. And so now you can see all of the census tract data and block group data on your screen. And on the left-hand side, we're going to go down to total students. So as you can see, this is a measure because it's a number, a numerical value. And we're going to drag that into color. And right now you can see that it's actually doing a weird thing. It's adding up all of the numbers, all of the rows in that column of total students. So that's actually not what we want it to do, because in this case, it's not going to break apart the different block groups by the number of students. So instead, we're going to change this variable into a dimension. Immediately, you can sort of see a gradient kind of happen. Again, all I did was select a variable and change it into a dimension. So now it's reading each numerical value in the row as its own number. Earlier, when it was a measure, it was treating it as a summation, and that's why that number was so large on the right-hand side. And so now that we've done this step, we're just going to rename our sheet name into IPUMs map. And I didn't do a latitude and longitude. All I did was double click on geometry right here. So if I get rid of this one more time, right here it says geometry, I'm double clicking it, and it's just going to instantly apply all of the block group data onto the map. Okay, now this is the fun part in Tableau where we're going to create a new layer. So the way that Tableau kind of treats the layers is this function called dual axis. So what I'm going to do, depending on whether you're working on a Windows or a Mac, I'm holding my Command key or the Control key. I'm selecting with my left click this variable called latitude, and I'm moving it over just by a little bit. And just with that one step, Tableau is duplicating the layer that we had just created.
Dual axis.
Yay! So again, I'm going to remove this one more time. I'm holding my Command key because I'm on a Mac, left clicking and dragging to the right hand side, dropping it, and boom, there's your new layer. And so if you're on a Windows, you want to Control click, but on a Mac is Command click. And something else that's different is on the left-hand side under marks, you should be able to see the different layers now. So this one represents the top layer. the second one represents the bottom. So depending on how you manipulate the, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Zoe.
We call this the sandwich approach to making graphs.
Yes. And so depending on what variables you want to include, you can sort of drag these out. Is everyone sort of caught up to this step? Any questions in the chat?
I think we're doing good.
Okay, awesome. All right, so now we're going to add in the library locations. So you can go ahead and choose whichever layer you want to use. It doesn't matter as long as you're only manipulating the same layer. So I'm just going to select the top layer. I think someone had asked the question.
It was just missing the second collection, so duplicating. If you could show that again where you're using control and dragging it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unfortunately I can't show my keyboard, but all I'm doing is holding command, and I'm taking the latitude variable. So make sure you can see the floating pill, and then just dropping it over.
Yeah, so you have to keep the command button held down as you're doing that.
Yeah, you'll need both of your hands.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like people have got that to work now.
Awesome. All right, so now we're on this left-hand column. We're going to be adding in the library locations. So make sure that it doesn't say all. You want to use either one of these layers. So just to make it easy, let's all select the bottommost layer. And then we're just going to get rid of everything. We don't need any of this.
So to remove those, Joy, you're just dragging them off the shelf, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to do anything else but drag them off the shelf, and then it should be gone.
Right. Or you can, click on the drop-down menu and select remove. But it works the same way as just kind of discarding it. And so now on the left, I'm sorry?
Your two maps should look different now. You know, the top one should show that data, and the bottom one is just the outline of the map.
Right, it should be completely blank. So on the left-hand side, we're going to scroll all the way down to sheet 1, our original data set, where it has all of the library locations. And what we're going to do now is double-click latitude and longitude. And again, you're going to see this familiar process of what we did in the first exercise, right? It kind of takes the average of all the latitude and longitudes and gives a central point. But we don't want it to do that. So we're going to drag in facility full name from the left-hand side back to label. And now you can see all of the locations are populated. But there's no color. So now for the last step, we're going to drag in type over to color. So again, I've cleared the entire bottom layer. I am double clicking on latitude, double clicking on longitude. I'm dragging in facility full name to the label. And then I'm dragging the type to color. And then this is where the magic happens. So like Zoe had mentioned earlier, this is the sandwich method, and we're going to now sandwich both of these layers together. And so right here on the second variable that we duplicated, if you click on the drop-down arrow, you should see the option that says dual axis. Again, that's the drop-down arrow and then dual axis. And boom, when I select that, Tableau just crashes these two layers together and you have a single beautiful map.
Julia is saying, awesome.
Yeah, again, if you're coming from a GIS background, this works completely differently from ArcGIS or anything like that. This is just a really easy way for new mappers to click, drag, and drop and just duplicate their data and showcase it on a singular map. And I saw a question, why couldn't we do this on the same map? It's because Tableau really wasn't created for spatial data in the beginning. It was just, if you click on the Show Me tabs, in the earlier versions, I'm sure they probably focused mostly on these bar charts and these graphs. So actually adding in spatial data, they found that a lot of people were requesting that. And so this is kind of just a way for them to kind of integrate that into the program, but to separate the data into different layers.
Yeah, and just reminding everyone that this census data was collected to show exactly where students live to the block group level. So Joy, if you can zoom in there, so we can tell exactly how many students with that margin of error that we had are living in each one of these block groups. And we're colorizing the block group by the number of undergrads and grads. And you remember my vision of, we want to know which public libraries or whether public libraries are going to be close enough to clusters of students that we could drop off books there, and they would be able to bike or to walk to one of those locations. So in order to answer or create a hypothesis, right, I needed to know where are the clusters of students living. And this data comes from 2014 through 2018 census. And it's any undergraduate students living in LA County. So we don't know whether they're going to UCLA or USC. We just know that these are the numbers. These are where the clusters of students are living.
And as you can see, our beautiful campus has the most number of students, which makes perfect sense for all the dorms. And I think I just saw a question from Craig. Yeah, I'm not extremely familiar with ArcGIS, but definitely there is a lot of kind of limitations of what you can do with mapping in Tableau. Basically, if you look at the map layers, this is the only other way you can sort of ingest data without having to go through the dual access method. And with the dual access, you are really limited to making only 2 layers. So I'm sure with ArcGIS or QGIS, you can add in obviously a lot more data layers, but to a certain degree, you don't want to add in too much, right? Otherwise, your map becomes less readable. But for Tableau, it's really just a stripped down program of what you can do with the spatial data that you have.
Yeah, and I think there's Yo. He can definitely help answer this question.
I can add a little bit to that, Craig. ArcGIS and QGIS, which we'll have a workshop on later, are dedicated software applications for geographic information systems, very specific to spatial data, whereas Tableau is kind of a more broader, serving package that's good for like dashboards, a lot of public health. I've seen a lot of COVID information on Tableau that's easy to produce for public facing interfaces. ArcGIS is a complete GIS package, and it allows you to overlay many spatial data layers, and it has an entire geo analysis toolbox. So you can do a lot of spatial queries, spatial analysis, things like transportation metrics, geostatistical packages. It's just a lot more involved in the spatial component of data. So, for quick maps, dashboards, Tableau is the way to go. If you want to dive into the spatial nature of your data, Beyond what Tableau offers, you would want to go into something like ArcGIS, QGIS, or if you're like me, you can do most of the stuff you can do in ArcGIS and QGIS through code, through R, RStudio, or Python.
Thank you for that explanation, Yo. And yeah, I actually saw another great question from Jane, and she asks about how we can change the colors and the styles of the background, and that leads us to our next step, which is to beautify this current map, because right now, as you can see, these numbers are kind of in the extreme values, so we're not really able to get a good sense of the different density of students. Like as you can see when I hover over my mouse, the color for total students 2 is the exact same for 74 or 80. So we definitely need to shrink the range of this spectrum that we've created. And so in order to do that, we're going to go over to this layer where it has our total students variable. So once everyone's there, we're going to select colors and then edit colors. And from here, you can choose all the different palettes that they have. You can actually customize your own as well. So I'm actually going to select custom sequential, but please feel free to do and choose any color you want to do. I think at the end, if people want to sort of share their links to their Tableau public versions, we can see different variations of the maps that we've created. So that'll be really cool. So right now, again, just to go over that step again, I am going back to the layers, the top layer where we have the total students. I'm selecting color, the marks card, edit colors, and then a custom sequential. So from here, you have a lot of different options you can play with. Not as many as ArcGIS or QGIS, but it is, again, the stripped down version. So we're going to select step colors. And then I can choose any one that I want. I think I like the blue for now, so I'm just going to select OK. Sorry, that color wheel is really at the bottom of my screen, so it's right here. I can select any of them, hit OK. And then in the advanced settings, we can indicate the start and the end range for our values. So in order to kind of eliminate the outlier variables that we have, or the outlier data that we have, I'm going to be typing in 50 and then 500 at the end. And so when I hit apply, you can already see everything changing. It's become more separated, and you can visually see the distinction between different community blocks. Does anyone need me to repeat that one more time? Let me know in the chat.
Yes, I have a quick question. My colors are all the same for every census tract, and I think it has the sum of all the population of students.
Oh, okay. So what you need to do is actually go to your total students and change that to dimension.
Got it.
Yeah, so you probably have it as a measure, which is sum, and you want to change that to dimension.
Thank you.
So Joy, one other thing that Brian was asking, and it's harder to type it than to show it. Could you show how to get the extra options for the colors in the palette?
Yeah. So again, on the left-hand side, you want to make sure you're on the right layer, because we're not really adjusting the type color, we're adjusting the total students. So I'm clicking on the marks card, selecting edit colors, and then all the way at the bottom, you have a way to choose your own colors, so to speak. So it's custom divergent or custom sequential. So I'm choosing custom sequential, and then I'm selecting this square, and that pulls up all the different kind of color variations that you can include. So you can choose your favorite color, which in my case, it's blue, so nothing has changed much. I'm selecting OK. Any other questions, Zoe?
I think that's it for now. Brian was just not seeing anything besides the palette. So I wasn't sure if that was a Tableau public thing or if it looks like everyone has that option. Yeah, the custom sequential.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
all
this is why it's called the. Yeah, yeah. Okay, he's got it. He's got it. Okay.
Yeah, and so I'm going to share kind of just one last kind of bonus feature that we have, but there's this box up here called Pages, which I really haven't talked about, but it kind of allows you to flip through the members of the field. So in this case, you don't have to do this with me because it's not going to stay in this workbook, so you can kind of just watch the screen. What I'm doing is I'm dragging in total students to Pages. And I'm changing this into, let's see, dimension. It's already a dimension, and I'm going to sort it from descending variable. And what that populates to the right here is kind of like this play button. So what that does is it shows kind of the various levels of students in the different tracks. So in this use case, it's not very helpful, but most likely you would use this feature to kind of show the progression of data through time.
Yeah, we use it a lot for time series, but this doesn't have a time series. So this is another feature in Tableau that works really well for animating things.
Mm-hmm. You can even control the speed. So right now I have show history selected, and you can kind of see all of the census tracts kind of coming into view. So it's just going through all these numbers, and I'm just manually dragging the slider to make it go faster. But again, you can kind of imagine what it would look like if you have a time element to it. So this is just another nifty function to give your data more dimension in Tableau. So I'm going to drag this back to where it belongs, which is color. Oh dear, hold on. Let's see, sort. Okay, so total students. Right. So hopefully none of you guys followed along with your own Tableau because it's really not used for this workshop, but I just kind of wanted to show you another feature that you can do. I'm sorry, did you want to explain how we use it for the hurricane tracks? Or
say that again, Joy, I missed it.
Did you want to explain how we use that for the hurricane tracks?
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing. I'll turn up my sound once more.
Okay. I think I'm just going to kind of catch up to everyone.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so,
Jane is asking about adding a background or something to the text labels to make them easier to read. So this kind of legibility issue is something that Tableau, it's very flexible in terms of changing font size and just really getting into the nitty-gritty of things. It also, I think Joy is going to show you next how to make a dashboard, and in the dashboard feature, or maybe it's the storyboard, there's 3 different levels of presentation that you can do, and there you can annotate things so that you can explain a lot more. It's more like a PowerPoint slide, presentation that you can go through and add annotation and tags. So you're not just limited to, you know, this layer, but you have other things that you can add in to show more explanation, zoom into things.
Right. And so again, if you're only seeing between 0 and 11,000, you need to go to your total students and then edit colors. And under the advanced tab, you can change the values here. So mine is between 50 to 500. Okay, so in order to put everything together, I'm going to create a dashboard. So on the bottom, you can see this option. It kind of looks like a window icon. So I'm just going to select New. And this is kind of a different looking interface, but this is a blank canvas for you to drag in the maps that you created. So what I'm going to do is drag in IPUMs map. And then what's really nifty is that for all our library locations in our original data set, there are actually URLs that went with each library location. So in order to make this dashboard more interactive, we're going to go back to our IPUMs map. And then we're going to drag in URL, which is on the left-hand side from Sheets, into the tooltip. So this tooltip marks is something new that I'm introducing right now, but it's the ability to kind of adjust what is displayed on the dialog box when you hover over a location. So once I have the tooltip dragged onto the, once I have the URL dragged into the tooltip, we're going to go back to our dashboard. And on the left-hand side, there's a web page option. And so I'm just going to click and drag that into our dashboard. And again, you have a lot of freedom to place it wherever you like. As you can see, these objects are kind of highlighted. So once I select that, it's going to give us a dialog box where it says edit URL. And from here, I'm going to select sheet name and select OK. And right now, it's not reading the web page because we haven't told Tableau where the URL is located. So in order to do that, we're going to click on More Options here, and then add a URL action. And so immediately you get this new dialog box that says Add URL action. You want to click on Select. And on the URL link, at the very bottom, you should see the attribute URL. I'm going kind of quickly, so I'll definitely go over this step one more time. But once I select that, you kind of have these options at the bottom where you can have it populate within the web page object. So all of that looks perfect. I'm going to select OK. OK. And so now when I click on it, let's see. Sorry, I'm going to remove this one more time. Select it. In 1 second.
Yeah, it has to be in the details of one of these pages.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I made a mistake here. So yeah, instead of putting it in the right layer, I put it in the wrong layer. So I'm going to get rid of that and drag in the URL to the details page, or the details marks. And I'm just going to adjust the settings one more time. So it should say URL. I'm hitting OK. When I select it, now it's going to show me the web page. had to adjust it because it was kind of bothering me. And so to go over those steps again, I'm going to delete the dashboard and just go back to your IPUMs map. And on this bottom layer where you have all of the different library locations, what I'm doing is I'm dragging in the URL from the left-hand side over to the details marks card. So you add this variable to the layer that has your facility full name, the types, and all of the library location points. So that should be the bottom layer for everyone. And then once I create a new dashboard, I am dragging in IPUMs map. And then on the left-hand side underneath, these are all the different objects that you can use to populate your dashboard. So if you kind of think back to high school or whenever you had to create kind of your science poster board, this is really your blank canvas to just customize it the way that you want. So we're going to drag in the web page over to the right-hand side. And it's going to populate a box called Edit URL. And then we're just selecting sheet name, selecting OK. And then to the right-hand side of this box, when we hover over the drop-down arrow, there should be an option that says Add URL Action. So on this page, on this dialog box, underneath One Action On, we're going to select the Select option. And under URL, there's another arrow, and then we're selecting URL. So this is just a way for us to assign where Tableau is reading, where these features are. So if I were to change this to hover, then every time I hover over library location, the bottom web page should generate on its own. And so you select OK, select OK again. And then now when you click on a library, it should bring you to the web page where you can find out more information about it.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
Yay, so we've all completed our own dashboard. And so now you can save it and feel free to put that link in your chat. So,
Joy, that was amazing. Sort of I think we packed so much into this, and I know there are lots of details that people may want to go back to the recording and kind of retrace their steps. So I'm sorry, we're almost out of time, but I think we do have time for some questions, and it looks like some people were able to make it all work. So if you would be willing to publish it to Tableau and send us the link, we would love to see what you were able to do, especially, you know, we can post some examples of the work that people are doing on this during the workshop. And let us know if you think this helps answer the question of whether the library should invest in a bookmobile. I think currently we're mailing books to people. So this would be something that we've been thinking about and discussing, and the data just happened to be available for us to use as an illustration of how you can sort of take a hypothesis like this, find open data, combine it in Tableau, and kind of use that to help answer your questions. And then even go back later. I mean, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll use this to scope out my project and then use it to gather more data or combine it to create other views. And in this way, sort of work through the conceptualization and the scoping of a project before I jump in and do a lot of data cleaning and a lot of work.
I'm going to end the recording here. Thank you everyone for coming. And we'll just jump right into Andy's workshop next.